Hello friends and welcome to edupediaworld.com, your destination to online education. Friends, in the fourth session of elements, compounds and mixture, we are going to discuss and learn about the suspension, which is one of the type of a mixture. But before starting with the new topic, let me give you a review of last session that we learn about the solution. To know about the solution, we should know the meaning of two terms, that is solute and solvent. A solute is a substance which is dissolved in a liquid to form a solution, and a liquid in which solute is dissolved is known as solvent. Here you can see I have taken one example where table sugar is a solute and water we have taken as a solvent. If we combine these two, that is solute and solvent, we form a sweet mixture that we call as solution. So what is solution? Solution is nothing but the particles which completely dissolve in a water is a solution. If we see the characteristics of solution, solution is nothing but a homogeneous mixture, and the size of solute particles in a solution is extremely small. The particles of solution cannot be seen even in the microscope. So the particles of solution pass through the filter paper, and the solution cannot be separated by the process of filtration. And the solution is very stable. That is, the particle of solute present in the solution do not separate out on keeping. You can also call them a true solution as they do not scatter light. That is, they don't allow to scatter light passing through them. Now, if we talk about the suspension, it is those substances which are insoluble in water which form a suspension. So this point will become more clear if I give you an example. Like if we take in what glass of water and we add a chalk powder in it, that is, if we put some powdered blackboard chalk into a beaker of water and stir it, we get a milky mixture, that is a milky white mixture. So we can see the tiny particles of chalk floating in the water. That is, the mixture of chalk particles and water is now called a suspension. In the chalk and water suspension, the chalk particles are quite larger and we can see them easily. If we filter the suspension of chalk and water, then the chalk particles do not pass through the filter paper, as the chalk particle remains as a solid residue on the filter paper, though the only clear water passes through the filter paper. This means that the chalk and water suspension can be separated by the filtration process. Now, if we allow the solution, that is a suspension, for to stand undisturbed for some time, then a chalk particle gradually separate out from the water and settle down at the bottom of the glass, or you can say container or a beaker. So here you can see at the bottom of the glass there is a suspended chalk powder. Now friends, how will we define suspension? We can define now the suspension as the heterogeneous mixture in which the small particles of a solid are spread throughout a liquid without dissolving in it. As the size of the solid particles in the suspension is quite large. You can also say that it is larger than 10 to the power minus 5 centimeter. So now we can get a good examples of suspension like muddy water, paints, flour water mixture, chalk water mixture. They all are the examples of suspension. Please note, friends, that the solid particles and water remain separated in the suspension, as the suspensions are formed by the substance which do not dissolve in water. So now, if you want to chalk down the characteristics of the suspension, we can write now by point-wise that first, it is a heterogeneous mixture. The size of the solute particle is quite large. It is larger than 10 to the power minus 5 centimeter in diameter. The particles of the suspension can be seen easily, that is by naked eyes. The particles of the suspension do not pass through a filter paper, so a suspension can be separated by the filtration process. The suspension are very unstable. Last but not the least, a suspension scatter a beam of light passing through it. So friends, when we talk about suspension, we should also learn about the some important questions which comes in our competitive exams and in our term exams about suspension. That first, why suspension is called as unstable. The reason is like, since the particles of suspension are quite big, they cannot remain in suspension state for a long time. So if we allow a suspension to stand undisturbed for some time, then the particles separate out from the liquid and settle down at the bottom of the container. And now we say that the suspension are unstable. Secondly, if we get a query that how can you separate suspension? Yes, as the particles are bigger, the particles get filtered out by the filter paper. So being a bigger in size, the particles of the suspension cannot pass through a filter paper, so they are left behind on the filter paper in the form of a solid residue. Thus, a suspension can be separated into solid and liquid by the process of filtration. Third, a very important question, why suspension is a heterogeneous mixture? It has a very simple answer, as we know that those substances which are soluble in water form solution, right? Because the particles are very small, which cannot be seen by microscope also. And those particles or substances which are insoluble in water is called suspension. And now, if we want to know about what is heterogeneous mixture is nothing but a mixture which does not have a uniform composition throughout its mass, that is, it has visible boundaries of separation between the various constituents. That is, a mixture of sugar and sand is a heterogeneous mixture because the different parts of this mixture will have a different sugar sand composition. Or you can also say that some parts of this mixture will have more of sugar particle, whereas other parts will have a more of sand particles. So there is a visible boundary of separation between the sugar and sand particles. Or you can also see here the example which I gave you, the chalk powder and the water. After some time they get sedimented at the bottom of the beaker. So the difference, that is a boundary line of these two solute and solvent, you can see here the clear lining between that is the clear boundary of separation between these two. So the suspension of solids in liquid are heterogeneous mixture. Now friends, we have understood all the pits and corners of suspension. Now it's your turn to do a small activity. If I give you one question, that if suppose you have been given a suspension and a solution, how would you tell the difference between them by the appearance? It is a very simple question. If you have seen this video and the previous video, you can answer this question. So friends, by ending up the session and giving you the details of the next session, which we are going to learn and discuss about the colloids, which is also the one of the type of mixture. So friends, let's meet in the next session with the very good topic, which is colloids. Thank you.